From one member causing a frenzy in the team by getting lost in the middle of nowhere, with having to endure attacks from a rather unlikely culprit, here is how the Appalachian investigators of mysterious sightings were attacked by a deranged scarecrow. Oh boy. Looks like the boys are out in the wild as they push on with their search for some of the legendary creatures in the American lore that are believed to wander on and around the Appalachian Mountains. Who could blame them? For many years when they were growing up, they must have been regaled with tales concerning legendary cryptids, such as the giant hairy bipedal creature known as Bigfoot, the cursed wolfman that may be preying on unwitting victims in the area, or the gigantic reptile known as the fire dragon, just to mention a few. Understandably, the chance of having an encounter with such creatures in the Appalachian Mountain area must be alluring enough to attract any outdoorsman and trapper in the area, and that is what happened when the Appalachian investigators of mysterious sightings heard that such creatures were in the area. Hailing from the West Virginia area, the Appalachian investigators of mysterious sightings, AIMS team, can call on experienced outdoorsmen and trappers such as John Trapper Tice. Considered to be the heart and soul of this truth-seeking team.
Ain't nothing gets by you, Jethro.
Trapper was a well-known outdoorsman who had decades of experience under his belt, thanks to the years he spent exploring the beauty and the fierce creatures that could be found in the Appalachian Mountains area. Thanks to this, he has been able to develop a deep and enviable knowledge on not only the layout of the Appalachian Mountains area, but also the local folklore and the legends concerning the mysterious creatures that are rumored to be in the area. Some could say that it is thanks to this knowledge and experience that he also decided to set up AIMS. That way, he would get to pass such knowledge as well as his own personal experience to the next generation of budding outdoorsmen. Eager to learn from people like Trapper, Jacob Buck Lowe decided to join AIMS. A well-known avid outdoorsman himself, Buck's skills as a tracker and as a hunter, skills that he developed from an early stage in his life, could only be said to be outdone by his energetic and daring demeanor. As such, he seems to be a perfect fit for the team because his exuberance and skill makes him stand out within the group. With such energy, there is every chance that his stint with AIMS will help him prove that he is one of the best monster hunters on that side of the Appalachian Mountains. With such expert outdoorsmen on the team, we're going to need someone to protect them from these monsters that are believed to be in the area.
It almost looks like Bigfoot sign.
Ho! Ho! Daggone! What was that? Get that thermal moving.
I don't know what put this here, but we're not supposed to be here. This isn't good.
As such, we're sure that the members of AIMS must have been delighted to recruit Joseph Huckleberry Lott, a tough and imposing security expert who would never let his charges come to any harm. Also, a West Virginian like the other two members of AIMS that we just mentioned, he is sort of different because he is known for his tough demeanor, a feature that would make him one of the most reliable security men you can find out there today. Thanks to his firm, uncompromising disposition, as well as his dedication, he makes sure that the members of AIMS remain safe during their many expeditions. Aside from the avid hunters, outdoorsmen, and security personnel on the team, AIMS made sure they recruited one of the best researchers and investigators they could find in the area. Cue in Jeff Headley, a researcher and investigator who made sure the team was on the right track when they went out exploring the Appalachian Mountains. With Jeff on board, as he is well versed in the local legends as well as the historical and eyewitness accounts recorded in the past, the team is sure they are in safe hands. The team is certain that they also have one of the best trackers in the area, thanks to the presence of Jeff on the team. Another great tracker that happens to be a member of AIMS is Willie McQuillian, the purported creative mind that helps the team set up the magnificent traps they try to use to capture some of the legendary cryptids that roam the Appalachian Mountains area. Thanks to his resourcefulness as well as his engineering and construction skills, there's every chance that he is capable of bringing some of these mysterious investigations to an end by helping them capture what they are looking for. Finally, we have William Wild Bill Neff, another fantastic tracker in the crew. However, it seems as though there is no man that has such a connection with these mountains as Wild Bill. Thanks to this deep connection with the wild in the area, he has been able to develop a deep knowledge of not only the local terrain and the wildlife that is believed to be in the Appalachian Mountains area, but also the folklore that got the members of AIMS out there in the first place. As such, one can see how Wild Bill seems to be one of the most invaluable members of the team.
You hear that? What the hell is that? That's over at damn pond where the boys is at.
They all can be considered to be invaluable, but we're not sure that there is a better man out there to seek out these strange and elusive creatures in the area than Wild Bill. What's worse, a missing friend or a stalker in the woods. Together, the members of Ames have taken on all comers because for many years, the group have pushed on with their many investigations so that they can bring many mysteries to an end. Just take a look at the time when they were scared out of their wits by a scarecrow of all things. Can you believe that? They were out on one of their many investigations when they realized that they had lost track of Huckleberry. How do you lose your security personnel? We aren't exactly sure how this happened because we know that once they realized that he was not with them, they dropped whatever they were doing out there to see if they could find their missing friend and companion. As if that wasn't bad enough, though, the team was still in a state of unease because ever since they came out to those necks of the woods, they couldn't shake off this feeling that they were being watched by someone or something out there. The prospect was terrifying because we aren't sure which is worse. What's even worse is that according to some of the more instinctive members of the team, they didn't have a mere feeling that they were being watched. They were sure they were being watched. As such, it was all they could do to keep their nerves while wandering through the Appalachian mountains in the dead of night. Whether it was just a mere feeling or a certainty, they couldn't shake off the thought that whatever was following them around had been doing so for more than 200 yards. As such, the team split, and soon, some members of the team heard a rustling in the tall corn stalks, and they figured that they may just have tracked their follower down.
We just found a spot where the corn looked like it opened up. Huckleberry might have went right into the corn.
Eager to bring this unnerving feeling to an end, the team slowly made their way to the source of the noise, hoping to hunt this intruder down so that they could bring an end to its stalking activities. As some of the members of the team tracked this stalker down, the others were still doing all they could do so that they could find their buddy Huckleberry. Apparently, the team realized that Huckleberry had gone missing because he felt he had seen something lurking in the tall corn stalks. He had decided to go his own way when they came to this tall oak tree in the area, so he went into this deep part of the woods. Unfortunately, the team lost track of him when they confused themselves by going in opposite directions from one another, and now they are left to worry about the safety and the whereabouts of their missing companion. Understanding that this is a bad situation, the team realized that they just had to keep on looking if they were going to find their boy. As such, they pushed on deeper into the area, looking for any clues that would help them find their missing friend. This effort seemed to pay off in due time because before long, they seemed to come across something that may lead them to the missing Huckleberry. This interesting clue seemed to be this spot where the corn stalks looked like they had been opened up. Looking at the size of the clearing, there was every chance that Huckleberry did go down this path into the corn. Hoping to make the most of the situation, the team decided to follow this path because it could very well be the best chance for them to find their man. Heck, he may even find them before they find him. Whatever happens first, we just know that they were only interested in finding Huckleberry. That said, they knew going down this path still posed some sort of challenge to them. According to Wild Bill, the area was still too large, so their best chance was to go side by side with one another in the hopes that it would help them see Huckleberry's light better. Despite making a bit of progress with their search, the plans changed when the other members of the team showed up with a vehicle. This was great because not only did this help them cover more ground, it also helped them get a bird's-eye view of the area.
We need to start driving the edges of this corn. Hey, Huck! See if we can't spot Huck, or maybe he'll see us and come on out.
Add the even brighter lights that came with the vehicle. Again, there was every chance that Huckleberry may find them before they found him. Truly, all fingers were crossed in this unnerving situation. Elsewhere, the rest of the team was still looking for the stalker in the woods. They just couldn't shake off that disturbing feeling that someone was truly out there in the area with them. It is made even worse by the memory of Huckleberry telling them that there was definitely something out there in the woods. As if that wasn't bad enough, the situation went up a notch when they were startled by some more rustling of plants in the area. Crap. What is out there, and why won't it just put them out of their misery instead of just following them around? Either way, now they are sure that whatever was stalking them was definitely in there with them. Time to trap the creature in the mountains. Elsewhere, the search for the missing Huckleberry pushed on. Searching with all the tools they had with them, They called out for their friend, hoping that he would emerge from the woods safe and healthy. Just as they hoped that their friend was safe and just lost because he took a shortcut he thought he knew, all thoughts of Huckleberry were thrown out of the window when they noticed something truly bizarre standing before them. With their headlights shining brightly on the bizarre figure standing before them, the team was even more surprised by the fact that the creature fled into the tall stalks of corn, as if it was more afraid of them than they were afraid of it. Well, that may prove to be the case, because rather than fleeing for their own safety, these nuts decided to go after the creature. Well, we can only guess that this is what you can expect from a group of passionate investigators. Unfortunately, the team lost the strange man or creature that ran into the vegetation. They were so shocked and alarmed by what they saw that they only realized that they still did not know what they saw. All they could tell was that it looked like a man that was wearing a mask. Before long, they all agreed that the figure kind of looked like a scarecrow.
Some man standing there looks like a damn scarecrow.
Surely they weren't on the yellow brick road, right? Because no matter how long they waited, they didn't see any signs of Dorothy, the Tin Man, or the Cowardly Man. Well, the only way to get to the bottom of this mystery was to follow the strange figure into the tall, thick vegetation. Good luck, boys. You're gonna need it. Shaken and excited at the same time, the team followed suit, still pondering on what they had just seen. It couldn't really be a scarecrow, right? Either way, they did not give up on their search for the mysterious creature. If anything, the viewers could see how they were getting even more excited about the search for whatever it was that they just saw. However, this proved to be a bit of a difficult task because our mystery man proved to be faster than they thought they would be. Before long, they realized that they had lost sight of the strange creature. However, as they tried to gather themselves, they were immediately animated when they heard some more rustling in the stalks of corn. Thinking it was the scarecrow, they rushed in. They were going to teach this mysterious entity a lesson. Just you wait. All they needed to do was make sure they got their hands on him. Realizing that they could not outrun the creature, they decided to wait in position so that they could watch on.
We need to get after him and figure out what the hell he's doing out here.
This seemed to be a great decision because they were soon excited once more when they believed that they heard someone or something that was making its way through the vegetation again. Eager to make sure that they took advantage of the situation, they decided to keep shut while also switching their lights off. They are going to outsmart this entity. It could very well be their best chance to catch the creep of a scarecrow that was making its way through the woods. At the same time, other members of the team were elsewhere still doing all they could to find the creature that had been stalking them for a while. Much like their counterparts, they knew to keep as quiet as possible so that they could listen out to whatever was out there. This was a great idea because the team and the viewers watching from home could hear whatever it was as it was making its way through the vegetation. Now both members of the team were busy stalking whatever it was out there. Turns out, those tracking skills do come in handy after all. After some more talking in hushed tones as they tried to wait each other out, both parts of the team decided to strike. They knew that it was either them or whatever it was on the other side, and if you asked them, they'd rather that it was whatever that was on the other side that should be the victim. Well, within moments they would know their fate. Well, it would turn out that their fate was somewhat more hilarious than we all thought it would be. Within moments, both sides of the team took the plunge, only to realize that they had been stalking each other. Turns out that they had even been stalking Huckleberry. What were the odds of that? The scene was so wild that they had almost stabbed or shot one another because they really believed that they were really in danger. Once tempers simmered down and the group realized that they were no longer in danger, they all exasperatedly asked Huckleberry how on earth he was able to get lost for so long. Plus, to be honest, they couldn't really expect themselves to find Huckleberry before he found them because the man can actually move like a ninja. They were never going to find him before he found them. Either way, the guys were just happy to have their man back.
I got drawed up in this corn.
Listen, you ain't gonna believe what we had happen to us tonight.
This meant that he would be able to help them take down whatever that scarecrow was. Now, we may think that it was all fun and games, but it turns out that the Ames team and this strange scarecrow entity had some history beforehand. It had actually attacked them at some point in time in the past, and as such, they were out for revenge. He had gotten to too many guys on the team, including Jeff and Buck. There was no way that they were going to leave this place without giving back to that nefarious being. When you think about it, how did a scarecrow get the better of these guys? Although it may be a bit funny to see how worked up they were about the scarecrow getting the better of them, you could clearly see that the team was out for blood. As worked up as they were in the moment, it seemed as though Huckleberry was going to be the voice of reason for the guy. After some moments of persuasion, the team eventually decided that maybe it was best for them to leave these parts of the Appalachian Mountains. It was the dead of night, and we were pretty sure that they would all love to get some rest back home. That said, they still couldn't get over the fact that they were attacked by what they believed to be a man dressed in a scarecrow costume. Why was there a man dressed up as a scarecrow to begin with? Like, who does that? Truly bizarre state of affairs, but as weird as it seemed, the guys seemed to think that this must have happened from a reason. That said, when they recapped the events of the night, it was truly one of the most bizarre nights the team had experienced as a unit. Not only had they witnessed a barn fire a few hours earlier, they had also seen the bizarre scene of Deathcat roaring. Our only guess was that a deranged man dressed as a scarecrow was the cherry on top of their strange night. Well, actually, maybe the cherry on top was when they were able to find their man, Huckleberry. That alone may actually be enough to make the entire night worth it. After resolving the issues, Ames realized that there were still some unanswered questions in the mix. For starters, what was up with Jacob's cross? Why was it hanging up on a limb like that?
Why was Jeff's cross hanging up on a limb the way it was?
Yeah, hanging.
There it is.
Well, if we are here asking such questions, we might as well ask why there was a fire in that barn to begin with. Well, with all the elements coming into play that night, there was no reason for the team not to believe that the fire was set by that dastardly scarecrow. With that in mind, the Ames team was certain that they were definitely dealing with a mere man. Sure, it was tricky like Loki or any other figure of lore worldwide, but he was definitely a man of flesh and blood. With that in mind, it seems that although there were talks of taking a break, this scarecrow was definitely still on their minds. Although they did not know when this was going to happen, there was one thing that was for sure. They were desperate to get their hands on this so-called scarecrow. At that moment, though, they felt that it was best for the team to head back home so that they could get some rest. First thing in the morning, their vendetta was back on. From one member causing a frenzy in the team by getting lost in the middle of nowhere with having to endure attacks from a rather unlikely culprit, here is how the Appalachian investigators of mysterious sightings were attacked by a deranged scarecrow. From the unnerving silence at the entrance of this strange, unexplored cave to the shocking experience this biologist had with one of the strangest creatures ever, here's how they tried to silence this biologist's discovery that defies scientific explanation. We'd love to tell you that this is a tale of fiction or fantasy, but no, this is the stuff of the nightmare that was experienced by this wildlife biologist. All he wanted to do was explore the unmapped cave systems found near the Ozarks close to the Mark Twain National Forest over in Missouri, but he would get a lot more than he ever expected. In fact, what may even be more daunting about his experience may not be the harrowing encounter with what he would run into when he went into these caves, but the fact that we still struggle to believe him, despite the fact that he was able to obtain what could be considered to be impossible readings from his thermal cameras. A seemingly harmless expedition down the caves in the Ozarks. We may have to start with the fact that the Ozarks over in Missouri are filled with thousands of unexplored caves that stretch for thousands of miles. Well, this seems to be the perfect challenge for our wildlife biologist who specializes in chiropterology, a field of science that focuses on the research of bats. In fact, our wildlife biologist claimed to have spent the last decade and a half traveling all over the U.S., with most of his energy being focused in the mid-southern region of this great country. To carry out said research on these wonderful creatures, he claims that he has had to explore many caves, such as the one that would prove to change his life forever. It all began when he decided to explore these mysterious caves in the Ozarks in late September of last year. All he wanted to do was carry out some bat surveys, and these caves seemed to be the perfect spot for such research. As he had been working hand in hand with a foundation that funds such research, He had all the funding and equipment such as infrared camera rigs that he needed to carry out the expedition into these caves. In fact, he also has the permission from the owner of the land to carry out said expedition. And as such, there was no risk of trespassing on someone's land. With his experience, the wildlife biologist was able to pick out several caves within the region to focus on. These caves were caves that had gone unexplored for far too long, and he was hoping to bring an end to that. With any luck, it would help him make advancements in his field of study, so much so that it may even help him bring the end to some of the diseases that plague these creatures. Ready to gather guano and other biological materials to study within these caves, he looked to be good to go. That said, this would be a challenge because, like we mentioned, these caves had gone largely unexplored. Despite this, he figured he had picked out the perfect place to start his expedition by making his way into the cave system through a well-known cave that was located in Shannon County, a point that was close to the current river. This was great because the conditions seemed to be the such that he was familiar with. The bats in the area seemed to be healthy, and there was nothing too weird in the area. Once he was done surveying this initial area, he decided that he was going to make some more progress by getting into some of the more remote parts of the cave system that had been flagged for more detailed exploration. Sometimes referred to as Gunther's Maze, the wildlife biologist figured he won't give us the real name of this cave system because he knows that some of the more adventurous viewers of this video may decide that this may be the best place to go explore during their free time. Hey, don't look at me. You know how you cave dwellers are. Either way, it would probably be impossible for you guys to get in there because you would be trespassing if you decide to go down these caves. Remember, it's on private property. Carrying on. With this harrowing story, our biologist got to the entrance of this cave in the afternoon. Hoping to make the most of the day, he organized himself so that he could carry out a preliminary sweep of the environment. Everything seemed normal apart from the fact that it seemed a bit too humid, despite the fact that it was autumn. He also noticed that it seemed a bit too quiet for comfort, as he didn't hear any of the usual chirping or buzzing that told him that the woodland insects and critters were nearby. Despite the strange hush aura of the area, he managed to stay resolute. However, as an experienced cave explorer, he knew that he would have to be careful going forward. The next day, our wildlife biologist went deeper into the cave and found nothing too unusual. In fact, the only thing that seemed to be close to anything relating to a red flag was that the mud in the cave seemed to be more slippery than anything he had ever encountered in his experience exploring such caves. In fact, it got so bad that he almost abandoned the expedition because he didn't want to fall over and injure himself or damage his equipment. However, after noticing that the moisture levels were still somewhat normal after making some progress going into the cave, he decided that he would still carry on. How bad could it really be in there? After carrying out his survey for more than an hour, he decided that this was the best time for him to set up his stationary audio recorders so that he can pick up echolocations from bats while also gathering ambient cave noises that he could study later on. Interestingly enough, the moment he set up his first audio recording device, he noticed that the microphone had picked up some rather strange harmonics from within the cave. Just listen to that. Creepy, right? It was so creepy that our wildlife biologist thought that his mic was damaged. After carrying out some examination on the mic, he realized that there was no damage to the piece of equipment. It was working well as it picked up these strange low-frequency rumblings while also picking up the high-pitched chirps at the same time. This was truly off to our explorer because he knew exactly what a group of bats would sound like. Perhaps not wanting to disturb himself too much, he figured that the odd frequency being picked up by the mic was some strange acoustic echo or some unknown geological phenomenon. Such oddities were not too strange to pick up in the Ozarks, as there were times where people picked up seismic microtremors or strange air currents that could sound like whistling. That said, the noise seemed a bit too coordinated for his liking, and as such, he couldn't help but feel unnerved by the experience. Despite this unnerving feeling, the wildlife biologist decided that he was going to push on with his exploration by going even deeper into the cave. He just had to figure out what could be the cause of the strange noises. Well, this proved to be a bit of a misstep, because as soon as he pushed on into the cave, he realized that the layout of said cave was more complicated than it seemed. Even with a map of the area, he realized that he would be the one who would end up charting a bit more detail into the layout of the cave. As such, he ended up exploring the cave a bit more than he initially planned to. No harm, no foul, at least not yet. As he got deeper, he decided to plant another audio recorder in a side passage as he went deeper into the cave. Eventually, he realized that he may have made his way into the main corridor of the cave. This was even more exciting to him, because this was when he began to notice the strange crystals that were forming on the walls. This is not too unusual, as people find natural crystal formations such as stalactites and stalagmites, or mineral deposits such as calcite or gypsum flowers within such caves. That said, he knew that what he was looking at was different, because these crystals looked like new growth, thanks to the sharp translucent features the crystals displayed as they formed on top of older colite structures. This was also exciting stuff for our wildlife biologist, because this made the caves worthy of even more geological study, and as a scientist, who wouldn't love that? As exciting as this may seem, there was no denying that the audio anomalies that he picked up earlier on may be related. After taking a mental note of this, the wildlife biologist decided to push on. He had been in the cave for about 2 hours now, and he didn't want to lose track of time, especially as he still had some more work to do. The next step involved in this exploration was for him to fix his infrared camera rigs onto the cave so that he can catch the bats as they fly around in the area. Infrared cameras seem perfect for the job, as they tend not to disturb the bats. After setting the first camera in an area that had guano piles, he went deeper into the cave so that he could set up his second camera. This proved to be a bit more exploratory, as he was now into the region of the cave that wasn't detailed by any map. With every step, he tried to get as much information about the environment as possible. As such, he noticed that the air in the cave was getting colder, so much so that he could see his breath in his headlamp gear. This actually threw him off a bit, because the caves didn't seem to be that deep. At least that is what the old records of the cave told him. Another fact that stood out to him was that the strange silence that engulfed the cave earlier on was a thing of the past. This time he could hear distant dripping sounds. Initially, he disregarded said dripping sounds and attributed them to the presence of water somewhere within the cave, but this was somewhat disputable because he could also hear a faint rhythmic tapping from a distance, as if someone or something was gently tapping on a rock within the cave. Considering how preposterous such a nothing seemed to be, the wildlife biologists tried to dismiss this thought as water droplets falling somewhere, but it just seemed to be a bit too patterned for comfort. He tried to trace the source of the sound, but it almost seemed as though it was playing games with him. When he stopped to trace the source of the sound, it would stop, but when he kept on moving, it would start again. Frightened because he was alone, it is understandable that he would be a bit jumpy. He would hate to get injured, or even worse, ambushed by something that could destroy him. Well, if he was jumpy now, he had no idea how bad things were going to be. An odd encounter of the strangest kind. Doing all he can to shake the unnerving feeling off, the wildlife biologist got to work fixing the second infrared camera. Just as he was done aiming it to face a large open cavity suited for roosting bats, he began to study his thermal monitor. This was important because he could observe hot areas which looked white in the monitor and cooler areas which looked black. At the same time, living creatures such as the bats showed up in lighter tones. With that in mind, it must have been really strange for the biologist when he noticed that there was this black, elongated shape that was moving along the far wall. This was especially strange because this figure wasn't registering any temperature at all, hence its black form on the wall. At first, the biologist thought that there must be some sort of problem with his equipment, but there was no doubt that his camera was tracking something that was definitely alive. Truly frightening stuff when you think about it. Hoping to see what this figure might be with his own eyes, our explorer decided to go to that section of the cave. Although he would only find rocks when he went to that part of the cave, he was still disturbed because his monitor told him that there was something that was still there. Except this time, it was moving in a weird way, as if it knew that something was coming its way. Shaken, but hoping to maintain his composure, he tried to explain the weird events by claiming that maybe the camera picked up a thermal inversion or a pocket of cold air. But he couldn't fool himself for too long because he knew that such phenomena could not move up the wall in that manner. No, something was definitely up, especially as he also realized that this creature had stepped away from the monitor, almost as if on purpose, because it had made its way around a corner. Still frightened, the biologist somehow fought the urge to flee because he knew that he needed to gather as much data as possible. With that in mind, he kept the second camera on so that it could keep recording while he made his way back to the first camera. This would prove to be an unnerving experience because the closer he got to the first camera, the more he realized that the weird noise was back again, except this time it was even louder. It even seemed as though it was echoing through the cave. Even the crystals on the walls seemed to be vibrating in response, and as such, you cannot blame the biologist for being frightened out of his wits. With the crystals glowing with a strange ebb when his lights hit them, the frightened biologist finally made his way back to the first camera station. Hoping to pack the camera up so that he could take a look at what he may have recorded, such plans changed when he realized that he felt as though something was hovering right behind him. Shaken to his core, the terrified biologist somehow summoned the nerve to turn around so that he could get a look at what may be standing behind him. To his shock, he saw nothing. What on earth was going on? Hoping to get some answers, he scanned the area for a few moments. Just as soon as he dismissed his fears, he was startled back to attention when he noticed this dark shape that was crouching behind a rock formation close by. To make matters worse, the dark shape decided to come out of the shadows. Standing about 8 to 9 feet tall, the bipedal creature was certainly big enough and intimidating enough to make our wildlife biologist wish he chose another field of study. Looking up into its eyes, he realized that his torchlight didn't cast a reflection of the creature's eyes. This was surely strange, because from his studies, he knew that creatures that were cave dwellers had that tapetum lucidum that can glow when they catch light in their eyes. This creature had none of that at all. As eerie as this experience was for the biologist, he tried to explain this experience away by trying to convince himself that this was a sort of rock or shadow. Alas, such a coping mechanism was thrown in the gutter when the huge creature moved. To make matters worse, it seemed to unfurl wings with a span of about 20 feet. If this didn't spell trouble, I'm not sure what spells trouble anymore. Frozen to his core, the biologist failed to escape. With an inability to cry out for help, he tried to reach for his camera, but even that came to a halt when the creature let out this deep, resonating hum. The hum seemed to be so powerful that some of the crystals reacted by fracturing. Somehow, the biologist sent signals to his legs to move, but even this didn't seem to be good enough, because for every step he took, the creature made its way towards him. Good God, what did he get himself into? To make it even stranger, it looked as though this creature was responsible for the black void. At least, that is what the monitor and the small handheld thermal viewer the biologist kept on him seemed to suggest. It was almost as if the creature absorbed heat. As he felt the creature watching him without picking up any discernible eyes, the biologist became even more frightened by what was going on because at this point, he could detect the creature's intelligence. He knew it was watching him. Thankfully, it seemed as though the creature lost interest in him because with one flap of its giant wings, it flew upwards and left the shaken biologist on his own in the cave. The flap of the creature's wings proved to be so powerful that it knocked our man off his feet while sending some rocks tumbling. At this point, the biologist knew that it was best for him to get the heck out of there, so he gathered his equipment before running for the hills. In fact, he ran so hard and so fast, he didn't stop until he got to his car, a feat that took several hours. Even then, he probably didn't feel safe until he made it back home. Once the sense of fear and dread wore off, the biologist gathered the metal to examine the footage he recorded. To his dismay, he realized that he was only able to get audio footage of his experience. Be that as it may, it was still daunting to review because the sounds did not give off the frequency of a normal bat or bird. Sure, he got some footage of himself making his way through the cave, but it was only brief, and it didn't get enough of the creature that haunted him in the cave on that fateful day. Thankfully, he had collected some crystals and some guano. Looking for more answers, he decided to send the samples off to 3 separate labs to see if he could get some more answers from the analysis of their mineral composition. To his surprise, he got some rather interesting answers. For starters, it was deduced that the mineral structure of the crystals told us that they were some form of aragonite. Although this was a common form of calcium carbonate, they seem to have trace elements that shouldn't coexist under normal geologic conditions. In fact, he was informed that they seem to have been formed under conditions of intense sonic or vibratory stress. Weird, right? Well, not as weird as the fact that bizarre cellular structures other than bat feces were found in the guano. In fact, these structures seem to display reptilian markers of all things. We thought bats were mammals, so how is this possible? What makes this even more disturbing is that the cells contain something that was similar to bat DNA. However, they had been spliced in a way that defied evolutionary convention. With all these results, labs tried to convince the biologist that he had messed up the sample. However, the biologist refused to be fooled. He had been careful with the samples, and he knew what he saw. What's perhaps even more disturbing about the whole thing is that after he told some colleagues about his experience, some of them came to the conclusion that he must have lost it. He even tried to go back with a friend, but they lost the mettle to explore the cave. Now, the biologist remains haunted by his experience, so much so that he has contemplated seeing a therapist. What's even worse is that after this experience, it seems as though some kind of government agency is trying to keep him quiet. He even received a phone call from an unknown source, which asked him not to share his findings with the public. Whatever the case may be, there is no doubt that this was a daunting experience. He doesn't even know what exactly this creature is till this day. What he does know is that there is something lurking within the deep, dark caves of the Ozarks. From the unnerving silence at the entrance of this strange, unexplored cave to the shocking experience this biologist had with one of the strangest creatures ever, here's how they tried to silence this biologist's discovery that defies scientific explanation.